All right, I think we're ready to get going here. Welcome everybody in our gallery as well as those online. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. And if we look at our agenda. Ooh.
Give me a second here. Echo. Did you join?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Oh, that's why.
Join.
Yeah.
Good? Yeah, they probably only want to hear me once, so yeah, thanks. If that, yeah. All right, so I look to council. Is there any added items that we'd like to put on the agenda today? Seeing none then, through consensus, I'll ask for adoption of the agenda. And that is passed. Thank you very much. All right, adoption of the previous minutes from our February 9th regular council meeting. I trust you all had time to review them. Was there any errors, omissions, anything that you'd like to change? Seeing none, through consensus, should we adopt the minutes from February 9th, 2026? That is unanimous as well. Thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to section 3, public hearings. Bylaw 2026-06, land bylaw 2025-14 amendment. And so before we get into the public hearing, I'd like to just read our pecuniary statement here. So pecuniary interest for municipal councillors, section 172 of the MGA states that you may not take part in the discussion and the decision making on any matter in which you have pecuniary interest. The legislation attempts to ensure that you are not discriminated either or against, for or against, by virtue of your membership to council. If you have pecuniary interest, you are to disclose that you have an interest and that its general nature prior to the discussion. You are to abstain from any discussion of the matter and from voting. You are to leave the room until the matter has been discussed and voting concluded. And you are to make sure that your abstention is recorded in the minutes. You are not to be discriminated against and are entitled to participate in the public hearing as a member of the public. Okay, moving on. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 2026-06, land use bylaw 2025-14 amendment open at 1:03. I now ask the municipal land use planner, Mr. Sloan, to please explain the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bylaw 2026-06 comes as a series of amendments to the land use bylaw. We typically do see when municipalities adopt entirely new land use bylaws, such as we did in this past fall. As we work through administrating it, we discover things that need to be adjusted and tweaked. So this is one of those such amending bylaws to tweak a number of things that were overlooked in the writing of the land use bylaw. This one in particular focuses on a couple of different topics. So the first being accessory buildings. We want to improve clarity on when civic addressing is required on accessory buildings. So such as detached garages or things like that. Specifically so that it's clear that the numbers are required on these buildings when they're facing a lane, in addition to the numbering that is required on the principal building. So your house is required to have a number at the front. If you have a detached garage on the lane, we also want to make sure that you have a number on that garage. It's important for emergency services if they're trying to navigate where they're located as they drive through a lane. This is something that was in the previous land use bylaw, and it was missed when we were transitioning to the new one, so we'd like to add that back in. Similar, number 2 there is clarifying the maximum height of 4.5 meters for accessory buildings pertains to residential accessory buildings. This was also the case in the previous bylaw from 2001. And in the new bylaw, instead of saying this is the height for residential accessory buildings, it says that this is the maximum height for accessory buildings. But we do have non-residential uses that typically see accessory buildings taller than this. And so 4.5 meters is just under 15 feet. Pretty standard height for a detached garage, which was the intent of that. But it's not really the intent of non-residential maximums. As well, maximum building height for these accessory buildings was listed in 2 different items in that section. So we've changed the one to adjust, as I mentioned, and then removed the duplicate regulation. The second category of amendments relate to multi-dwelling developments. The first being to specify the maximum front yard hardscaping. So that's a concrete patio, driveway, things like that. So to specify that the maximum front yard hardscaping in residential areas is intended for low density developments. Larger multifamily developments often have parking lots in the front that may skew this ratio of hardscaping to landscaping. We also still have landscaping requirements for those developments, but just the way that they are developed in town, that parking lot is quite often in the front of the building. Finally, we're proposing to add a threshold for different side yard setbacks in the mixed use node or MUN land use district, depending on building height. The current minimum of 4 meters was written with the idea of larger multi-dwelling buildings in mind, such as apartment buildings. But a 4 meter side yard setback makes less sense for the other uses that are also allowed in that district, such as duplexes or fourplexes. So the proposal has different side yard maximum or minimum setbacks, depending on the type of building, and it's based on building height. This is already the case for front yard and rear yard setbacks, so we're just bringing the side yard setback and how those are regulated into alignment with front and rear. And so that is the list in the bylaw that we've, in the document, we've presented a redlined version of all these changes, so you can see what has been removed from the bylaw and what is being added in its place as requested at first reading. And then there's the draft bylaw is also attached. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. All right, so we'll move on to persons addressing council now in regards to this matter. Presentations before the council shall be brief and to the point and limited to 5 minutes. Council shall not allow cross-examination of persons giving information, and it will not be necessary for the persons giving information to verify his or her qualifications. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes. No debating or questions from the floor will be allowed. No written verbal submissions will be received by council after the public hearing is closed. And moving on with the process, I'll ask twice for those that are in support of these changes. I'll ask twice for those who are opposed, giving chances for the public to address their concerns, as well as I'll call for those who are deemed affected by, and I'll call that twice as well to make sure that everybody is heard. Okay, and so getting started then, I'll call for all those persons that are in support of the proposed bylaw to come forward and make a presentation. For a second time, I'll call for all those that are in support of the proposed bylaw to come forward and make a presentation. Okay, seeing none, then I'll move on to first call for all those opposed the proposed bylaw to come forward and make a presentation. Please state your name and your address as well, please, for the record.
Hey, my name's Eric Carlson. My address is 4714 50th Street. I think you guys are starting to get to know me. So I was under the assumption this actually was just about the garages. You guys cited 57th Street, some address on 57th, like in maybe the first meeting of the year, but you're definitely trying to help out Jason here. His noise barrier walls are going to be 7.5 meters tall. He can call them accessory structures. In the land use bylaw, accessory structures and accessory buildings are the same thing. His walls, as it stands, are going to be 300% taller than the 2.5 meters it's allowed, or if it's 4 meters for accessory structures, because I think walls are 2.5, so the 4 meters, it's still like 158%. I'm pretty sure he can give a 15% variance. Anything over the 15% variance you guys have to do, and I think you need a public vote. So all of this is in, you guys are talking about buildings, you're talking about not building garages bigger than houses, but at the end of the day, it's just because you probably didn't know he's going to build a 7.5 meter wall for noise impacts, which is like bigger than most prison walls, and it's probably not even going to deal with the low frequency noise. And this is all for Jason and Synapse. It's not for our town. It's not for neighborhoods who maybe someone has to live next to a garage that's big. It's like, I live in a neighborhood where there's tiny little houses. Who cares if his garage is a foot taller than the house? This is all about accessory buildings and accessory structures. It's not about, maybe it is about garages. Maybe garages actually do. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And the house you mentioned in the first meeting, it's a beautiful house. The garage is beautiful. I can't remember the address, but it's somewhere near the Olds Elementary Road. But yeah, it's so that you guys don't have to do a public vote when all of a sudden he starts building his noise walls and they're 300% taller than a wall, or like 150% taller than an accessory structure, which in the land use bylaw, accessory structures and accessory buildings are they're the same thing. This is all about Synapse. It's not about garages. I don't care about the hardscape. There's some, whatever, who cares? That probably actually does relate to Jason too. I just haven't looked into that. I've looked into the walls. I've looked into the accessory structures of buildings. So I think this is disingenuous. I think you guys should stay the vote or not do it and actually have a public hearing so that the citizens of Olds can have more input on the giant prison walls that are actually built larger than the back of his building. His building's tapered down. They're 23 feet at the back. The wall is taller. So it's like me, I can't build a garage bigger than the roof of my house. He gets to build a giant wall that, yeah, is comparable to a prison wall. I know that might be hyperbolic, but I'm going to do it. But yeah, if I want to build a garage, I'm a heavy-duty mechanic. It'd be sweet to have a hoist in my garage, lift up my truck, lift up my wife's car, work underneath them. You need a pretty big roof for that. I don't know if my roof the house is that big. Like, I don't know. This is just, it seems like you're pulling the wool over our eyes. You're really trying to sell this as something it's not. And this is directly going to help him get the noise walls he needs that are probably not going to cut down the noise. And we're probably going to be living in a low frequency noise desert or like disaster. The whole east side of Olds is just going to be like, try going to sleep when you just hear an industrial hum when you lay your head on the pillow. So anyways, yeah, I don't support this. I think you guys are being disingenuous, and some of you are better than others. I appreciate Councillor Wilson and Councillor Krush. They took our considerations a lot more into account than the other councillors that we elected. And yeah, I don't know. I think you guys need to listen to the public a little bit more and maybe not try to do sneaky things like this. So I don't know who was involved in writing this, but that accessory building in there, 100% will make it so his walls don't need to go to public vote. He can just slam them up. And yeah, like, I don't know, visual impact, they're going to be big. That's for sure. So, anyways, I don't support it. I think you guys are doing things a little too shady, a little too in the background. And yeah, so anyways, thanks for your time and have a nice day.
Thank you. Any others in opposed? Please state your name and address, please.
I'm Janie Olson, living on Park Meadows, Crescent. So to Mayor and Council, under the current Land Use Bylaw 2514, all accessory buildings, including those in light industrial zones, are capped at 4.5 meters. So Bylaw 2026-06 proposes to remove this cap for all non-residential buildings. However, the amendment fails to provide a new numerical maximum. By removing the 4.5 limit without specifying a replacement cap, Council is creating a height vacuum. This grants developers nearly unlimited vertical freedom for stacks, fencing, and cooling infrastructure. So the Town of Old's Land Use Bylaw defines light industrial, or I-1 district, as an area for uses that do not create significant adverse environmental effects beyond the site. A 24-foot security fence or massive exhaust stacks, 18 by 57, I believe, are by definition heavy industrial impacts. If these structures are allowed to exceed the typical 16-meter principal height, building height without a hard cap, the distinction between light and heavy industrial disappears. I would formally request that Council table the second and third readings of this bylaw until the following height caps are explicitly written into the text for light industrial district. Maximum height for accessory buildings and stacks, a maximum height that does not exceed the principal building limit of 16 meters, and for security fencing, a hard cap of 8 feet, consistent with standard industrial safety to prevent 24-foot institutional-like proposed as has been proposed for this project coming up. So for housekeeping, this should not be a tool to bypass public scrutiny of massive infrastructure. If the town intends to follow the 24-foot fence and towering stacks as an entrance to our community, is it not essentially a blank check to just come and build whatever you like? So I would ask you to table this, revisit it, have your municipal development people come back to you with caps for the light industrial to actually make that zoning make sense.
Thank you. Any others that are opposed? Please state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Rachel Sorensen. I live at 4606 47 Ave. This is very uncomfortable for me. I don't public speak, but I've been trying to learn about this bylaw that we're talking to today, and I don't think I have it clear in my mind. What I am worried about is if we, the town, the bylaw makers, are going to increase this and to allow 10 57-foot stacks to be spewing emissions around the town. It's 10 57-foot stacks, 18 meters diameter. And that's all. I too would like it tabled so that everyone, I don't know what you guys know about this proposed project, but I really hope you learn about all of this, because a lot of people are going to wake up one day in their house in the buffer zone, the 200-meter Mountain View County, and we're going to be this smoking power plant within town limits, in my neighborhood, as they say, in my backyard. Thank you.
Okay. Second call for all those opposed. Excuse me. Okay, we'll move on to first call for those that deem to be affected by. And also, if there's anybody online, please indicate if there's anybody online that would like to speak. So, first time for all those deemed to be affected by. second call for all those deemed to be affected by this proposed bylaw? Okay, seeing none, I'll now ask the council for comments. Any of the council members that would like to make a comment at this time? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to either the municipal planner or to the CAO. So if this bylaw adjustment goes through, bylaw amendment goes through, what is the check and balance? And I'm not asking specifically with Synapse, I'm with regard to any future project development. What is the check and balance there around, I guess, scrutiny of the height and application of the bylaw, or is it set in stone? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, through the chair. So the light industrial district in particular does have a maximum building height of 20 meters. And fences are regulated differently. Fences generally have a maximum height of 2 meters, but in industrial districts, they have a maximum height of 2.5 meters. So there certainly are considerations about noise walls and how they would be defined. This bylaw came about before the discussion of noise walls entered the discourse for any particular development, and actually came about because of a different inquiry about a canvassed cold storage building in an industrial district. But the district itself, like I say, does have a maximum height limit that would apply to both principal buildings and accessory buildings.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. And my question was going to be similar to what Councillor Wilson has already asked. I was just going to ask if there were any height restrictions in these industrial areas and if this was applicable at this time. So I appreciate the opportunity, but I believe my question has been answered.
Thank you. COO Williams.
Thanks, Mayor Daley. Just to add on to Kyle's answer to Councillor Wilson, I think he asked, what does it look like for a proposal or a project, which this is just zoning, if a development permit or building permit had a variance request built in, that would be considered at that time. So right now, the accessory use is going to match what's the maximum in the industrial area in the land use bylaw, which is 20 meters. So anything that exceeds 20 meters would have to be considered separately. If it's 15% or under, that's administrative variance. 15% or over 15% is council variance. So I think that was the last part of your question you're getting to, what that process looks like. But there is height maximums for buildings. Fencing is not part of buildings. Any variances are considered during the development permit process, and based on their percentage value of variance, either is dealt administratively or to council.
Any further comments from council? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. And shifting gears 180 degrees to maybe a lighter topic, the addressing, just through you to the municipal planner, can just confirm for me for clarity. So if I have a residence facing onto a lane, I don't need address numbers on the back of my residence. But if I have, under the bylaw amendment, if I have a chicken coop or a detached garage or a utility shed, I would need to have address on the back of the building, correct?
Thank you for your question, through the chair. Technically correct, yes. So most chicken coops or garden sheds or things like that would likely be inside a fence and not visible from the lane, so you probably wouldn't need an address on that. Whereas a garage on the lane probably is meant to access it, so it wouldn't have a fence in the way. As far as a house goes, there are some instances in town where a house is on a street and then there's a lane on the side. You wouldn't be required to have addressing on the front of the house and the side of the same building. This is just for the addressing to be visible on the accessory building that's on the lane.
Thank you. Councillor Kirsch.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to either CAO Wilson or Director Sloan. Would a sound wall in a hypothetical build moving forward, would that be considered a accessory building, or would it be considered a fence? Or do you not quite know yet?
Thank you for the question through the chair again. We have been beginning to have those conversations in the department. We're not quite sure yet what they'd be called. Now, in speaking with our building inspector, there is some consideration from his end that if we consider them an accessory building, then there could be a building permit. There's typically no building permits for fences, but these would be much more impacted by wind and things like that, that the safety codes might come into play. In most cases, I would consider any sort of wall that is just a wall on its own to be a fence. So I would lean towards calling it a fence, because I think even if we do call it a fence and do a development permit for it that way, we can still require a building permit, and he can still do his review to make sure it meets the building code.
Yeah, we're just in the council comments right now. Okay. Thank you. Did I see a hand up over here? Councillor Curtis. Councillor Cook, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Manager Sloan. Do you anticipate that the changes proposed in this bylaw would make it so that a proposed data center would have less scrutiny in its development process?
Thank you for the question through the chair. No, I don't think it would. The one change that could apply would be for an accessory building. Like I just said, I don't think I would consider a sound wall to be an accessory building. I would lean towards calling that a fence. But the impact on that would be, currently an accessory building is technically has a max height of 4.5 meters, which, to be clear, has never been the case since at least 2001 in town until the new bylaw came in October, and that was overlooked and applied to all accessory buildings. Under the previous bylaw, accessory buildings in the industrial district had no height limit because the light industrial district in the previous bylaw had no height limit. So now it does, but applying a 4.5 meter height limit doesn't make sense for industrial uses.
Thank you for that. The only concern I have, and excuse me for my ignorance, is that on section 3.1 in your rewrite, I'm not sure whether the rewrite actually captures what you're trying to enable, and it may be indicated somewhere else in the land use bylaw. But with that statement, it says that if it's included on lanes, it says it needs to have a house, business premises, or accessory buildings need to be included those on lanes. I'm not sure it says that you should have an address on the back of your accessory building, like a garage or whatever, and on the front. So I'm not maybe I'm just not reading that correctly, but to me that seems like it's missing out on some clarity there in that statement.
Thank you. Yes. So accessory buildings in residential areas are not allowed in the front yard. So it wouldn't apply to an accessory building that couldn't be seen from a street or lane. Adding the wording including those located on lanes was just intended to make it clear that garages on lanes are required to have a house number.
Okay, I'll leave it to your expertise, Mr. Sloan. But yeah, there's probably I'm missing something in some previous sections as well. So I'll leave it to your expertise. Councillor Kirsch?
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Sloan. Can you tell me what section in the land use bylaw dictates that the height of a light industrial building can be no more than 20 meters? Just if you have it off the top of your head, or
yes, thank you. I have that page open on my screen right now, actually. So that's within the district regulations itself. So in section 6.14, which is the light industrial district, subsection 2E says maximum building height 20 meters.
Go ahead, supplemental.
so this change is only going to affect residential zoning or mixed use and not light industrial at all?
No. This change will impact all non-residential districts because accessory building height is not regulated within the land use districts separately. So accessory building height is within the accessory building specific use or use specific regulations. And that's where there was a blanket 4.5 meters applied regardless of district. And the intent was to bring that over from the previous bylaw and apply it only to the 4.5 meters only to residential districts. So currently it is applied to non-residential districts, including light industrial. And the proposed amendment would be to remove that 4.5 meter cap for accessory buildings in non-residential districts.
Which would then, which would mean the cap would now be 20 meters. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? I'll turn it back over to Mr. Sloan for any final comments that you would like to make.
I don't have anything coming to mind at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with that then, I will declare public hearing for bylaw 2026-06, land use bylaw 2025-14 amendment, closed at 1:34. Right, so that brings us back to our agenda now. On our page 35, I believe, and so I'll look to now for Councillor Cook.
I move that bylaw 2026-06 be given second reading as presented.
Thank you. Any last comments, questions? No? All those in favor? Thank you. That is passed unanimously. Next motion, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I move that bylaw 2026-06 be given third and final reading as presented.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? None. All those in favor? Sorry, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you to the gallery for their input, and thank you for those online watching as well. Moves us down to item number 4 on our agenda, which is delegations. I'll turn it over to C.L. Williams for introductions.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. With us today is Jason Van Gaal, with Synapse Data Center. He's going to provide council with an information brief on the status of the project planning thus far and where he's at in the provincial and municipal side of things. Jason, please go up and I'll scroll for you.
Hello. Hello? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for inviting me here today to provide an update on our project. I think everyone has seen this slide, but behind me, we have a great team working at putting together our data center here in Olds. So in addition to all of the municipal process that we're going through with the town, we also have a significant amount of provincial permitting that we need to move through. The province looks at a number of things: noise, air quality, traffic, water consumption to a lesser extent on this project because we're connecting with the municipal water supply and visual elements of the project. In this presentation today, I'm going to mainly speak to noise and air quality, as that seems to be the items that we're asked most about from the public. Just one item on traffic. We are working, or we will need to be going through traffic impact assessment with the project, with the province. There was one that was done in the Northeast 2024 ASP that provides some direction on what that may end up looking like, but we are going to be refreshing that and making sure that it is current. So the facility operates 99% of the time in normal operation mode and 1% in emergency. Really the difference between those two is the generators are running up to 1% of the time, and that is included in our provincial permitting process, so the province will not allow us to run more than that duration as part of our permit approval application. So when you see in the noise impact assessment and when you see in the emissions assessment that we've had completed, you'll sometimes see reference to normal and emergency scenarios, and that's kind of the difference here. And later in the presentation, I'll talk about how we are actively working to reduce that 1%. It's the upper bound that we're allowed to operate within. We are trying to get that number down as low as possible for everybody. So as part of coming to Olds and reviewing site selection across the province for this type of project, we identified the Northeast Area Structure Plan area that was intended to be zoned for industrial purposes, light industrial purposes. The location of these quarters is well situated for winds that do carry noise and emissions, and later in the presentation I'll show you a outline of general wind direction that local weather stations have collected, and that was included in one of our reports. But you'll see that the site is well situated for wind location. Also, as part of development, we did look at how far back can we set the buildings. We didn't want them to be overwhelmingly large on the front of the property. They are large buildings, there's no question, but we did do our best to try to set them back as far as possible from the road. And the third item that we looked at as part of the site layout is how do we try to capture and obtain the sound that these facilities would create within the site. So positioning of the natural gas plants at the rear of the data centers, which are the small boxes that you see on the site plan, putting mechanical and electrical equipment between the data centers, kind of creating a natural sound enclosure from the site. And so we did run that through the noise models, and the results were not great. We have a 62 decibel under that scenario just on its own. 62 decibels of facility sound pressure level were created, which is about the equivalent of running a dishwasher kind of constantly outside, which can be loud. I wouldn't want that in my backyard all the time. And there's something that we looked at, or the sound modeling people look at as part of this, is the increase against ambient. So how much impact against the current baseline would our facility add to the ambient noise in the area? And the result of this first model that we ran was it was about a 25 decibel increase. So we said, that's not good enough. Maybe it works well if you're going to put one of these in the middle of a farmer's field away from a lot of people, but it certainly does not work well in the city or near the town of Olds. So we said, how do we make this better? And we developed a multi-prong approach with our sound engineers on how to contain and mitigate. So the first step of this is containment of noise within sound enclosures directly around equipment. So the turbines themselves are installed inside of a steel frame structure with metal insulated panels, similar to what you would see here. This is an approach that we observed when we went to the NMAX facility on the east side of Calgary. They used metal insulated panels, and we did some sound readings there, and inside the building was 80 or 85 decibels, which is damaging to hearing. And as soon as you stepped outside of the building, it was low 60s. So we're using kind of that sound measurement as our target of what we can achieve with the turbine building specifically. We have other noise emission devices on site, so the chillers and the emergency generators. So for our chillers, we have enclosures around them to a certain extent. And the target of noise coming out of those is 65 dB or less at 10 meters. And for emergency generators, which run less than 1% of the year, 75 dB or less at 10 meters. There's also things that we're doing around vibration in terms of installing dampening devices on how they would be mounted to concrete pads to reduce other noise emitting sources. This is an example of what you would see for a typical chiller. On the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, an example of a generator enclosure. So you can't obviously see the generator, it's inside the enclosure. Likewise, you can't see the compressors, they're inside the chiller enclosure. So these are methods that we use to specifically dampen sound, which you wouldn't necessarily need to use if you were installing the site in the middle of a field. And then additionally, we said, how do we prevent noise that does emit from those devices? Because 65 is obviously not zero. And noise does dissipate as it carries, but how do we accelerate that dissipation? And so that's where we're kind of merging engineering with nature and installing. The intention is to install sound attenuation walls, similar to what you would see beside highways that are near residential areas. They would reduce and suppress noise. For residents, so we're adding those, and we're also including berms and trees to add a nice aesthetic appeal to the property, but also help absorb some of those low frequency noises with that denser material that you would find in berms. And the result in the models is a substantial reduction in noise emitted from this facility. So instead of the equivalent of having a dishwasher running outside in your backyard all the time, you have what would be less than a typical quiet library. And so the total add to ambient in this model on average with the 21 receptors that we looked at is about 2.6 decibels. Our sound engineers tell me 3 to 5 decibels is audible to some people for actually distinguishing that noise is emitting from a facility. So we're at that kind of below that limit of what is actually audible to most people with these models. I will add that in these models, we do not have the berms and trees, which should further suppress the noise. These models also look at what is the worst case outcome, which is the wind blowing in the absolute worst direction, which is not typical given the placement of the site on the northeast side. And they also assume that the chillers are running at full load on a hot summer's day. In the wintertime, chillers are running at much less than full capacity because they utilize free cooling. So we would expect the noise to drop even further than this as part of, different operating modes. But this is the worst case projection that is included here. And yeah, on the left-hand side, you can see some of the red boxes you would see are areas that we would be putting sound fences to contain the noise. On the right-hand side, you can see was like an cumulative emissions graph showing the different projected sound levels at various areas. It's important to understand this is cumulative. So the model looks at what is the expected level produced from the city and the residents currently, and then what noise would be added on top of that as a result of the facility. And that's kind of that 2.6 decibel level that I had mentioned is the average as part of this. This is an example of berms that we're working with the municipality to develop. We want this to be as aesthetically pleasing as possible to the community, and we're very happy to do whatever council and the planning committee would like to see from us on this, and the population would love feedback from everybody on what everyone would like these berms to look like. This is an example of the wind direction. So the longer bars are where wind would be more commonly coming from. So more from the southwest, as you can see this, and much less from the northeast. Sound does carry does run upstream of wind, but is dampened and suppressed more when it's going against wind. It likes to carry with wind. Air emissions certainly like to carry with wind. This is the air emissions worst case threshold that was included in our air emissions report. In our AUC filing, it's also gone into the AEPA, who is the predominant government agency that reviews air emissions. So you can see our normal case operating mode here. The AEPA likes to look at what is the ambient air quality at receptors. So they care about what is coming out of the stack, but they care most about what the air quality is like for people. And so this model shows that our 1 hour worst case scenarios are at about 60% below government thresholds. So that's 99% plus of the time. Again, worst case with the wind blowing the wrong direction. The annual average model is at 90% below government thresholds. So these are very good models. I actually was a little bit worried that we made a mistake, but what my emissions experts are telling me is because of the distributed nature of the stacks, we're getting much better dispersion than you would normally get with an 800 megawatt plant that only has one stack. So that we're seeing the air in the emissions mix much better than would normally be expected. The results I don't love, and our emergency generators are slightly above the air quality maximums. Again, these run less than maximum 1% of the year, and they're 2 to 20% above where we would like them to be. We did have our emissions experts dig further into that and look at, given the wind is not typically blowing the wrong direction, given our placement, how many hours a year do we expect that this would actually be above a threshold? And the estimate is about 2.2 hours per year. So 99% plus of the year, we're 60 to 90% below threshold, and then 2.2 hours a year, we're 2 to 20% above threshold in this air emissions model. And so then I mentioned we want to drive down our the amount of time we need to run on emergency generator. How do we do that? The first thing we've done is create cross-plant power redundancy. There's 20, 50 megawatt turbines and 10 40 megawatt steam engines. The team has done a fantastic job allowing for those to each run fairly autonomously. So we can take down one turbine for maintenance and still run our HRSG and the other turbine in the plant. We can also cross-feed our plants. The goal with our design is to create grid-level reliability through the plant distribution in an energy island configuration. So that's been the focus for the team. That said, if we lose natural gas pressure, then our plants can't operate. So a big focus is how do we reduce that risk of our pressure dropping and all of the generators, emergency generators turning on. And so part of what we're doing there is sourcing from multiple natural gas producers. There's some nearby producers and there's ones that are a little bit further away. We're in the process of looking into building out a 50-kilometer plus pipeline to connect to those multiple producers. So if we lost one, the other ones are ideally functioning and not all the generators would come out at the same time. Past that, we're looking at how do we connect into ATCO and NGTL to have provider diversity. There is a pipe, an ATCO pipe that runs through the property already. And we're also looking at how do we build multiple pipelines to the site from the providers in case we have a pipe severance. And then additionally, natural gas storage. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at in terms of how do we drive down the amount of time that we would need to operate on these emergency generators, which our clients don't want to operate on generators. We don't want to operate on generators. The town, I imagine, doesn't want us as well, but we need them there. So how do we reduce the amount of time we need to use them? Water consumption. The figures here are all the same as in previous presentations with people, except for the staff one. We did increase the amount of water that staff will likely need. We'd been using about 20 liters per day per person. Looking at actual water data in the town of Olds for consumption, it's probably closer to 40. So that number has gone up. Our plant operation figures have not changed. It takes about 9,000 meters cubed to fill up all of the systems, which are 900 meters cubed per month for 10 months. And then normal operations about 20 meters cubed per day for plant consumption. So we had thought there was actually going to be 1-to-1 ratio, but it actually seems the plant is going to be using about half of the amount of water that our staff would be using. There's been some questions around glycol treatment and line purging. It is not typical that you would have to purge a glycol loop in a data center environment. There's a lot of careful planning that goes into proper commissioning of the pipes, ensuring that there's not bacteria that would enter into the pipes and cause for premature treatment. So we would generally treat while the system is running without purging. It's not to say that they won't ever need to be purged. Our environmental permit does not allow for us to do wastewater treatment on site, or we've not applied to the province to ask for that. So for any wastewater that would be generated, it would be removed from site, trucked off site, and treated at a proper facility. And I mean, of course, the more why we're here, we're excited about this opportunity to create jobs in the Olds area. We've had between 200 and 300 people apply to work with us thus far in the area. We've had many local businesses reach out about support and wanting to be able to submit pricing for the project. One of the unique things that we do is how we hire. We'll be acting as the general contractor for construction, which allows us to directly hire smaller contractors, many of which can be in the area. So we are working specifically with a couple of smaller contractors to help them pre-prepare for bid submission. And we know the large ones will be able to bid, but we want to make sure that the small ones, local small ones, have an opportunity to submit as well. And our training program that we'd established at our last data center in Montreal, where we basically put individuals that want to work at the facility that don't have data center experience through a comprehensive training program. So anyone with a technical background or interest in customer service or interested in security, if they haven't worked at a data center, we will train them. That's not a problem. It's generally about 2 to 4 week dedicated theory-based, and then we partner people up and we get them trained. It's a great job for young early graduates that have trouble finding their first job. We're happy to hire them as well. We love technical degrees, but we also hire very much based on aptitude as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Van Gaal. I look to council for any comments or questions. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal. Thank you for presenting to council today. I'm not going to profess to be technically inclined whatsoever, so I don't really want to get into too many of the technical situations that you've brought forth. I trust that the architects and engineers that you have in your employment will comply with the regulations set by Alberta Environment and the Alberta Utility Commission, and I trust that that process will be followed through. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I believe that many questions are still going to come forth, and I understand that we as a town have now hired a third-party engineering firm to review your findings and assess from there as well. So I trust that this process will go forward, and I appreciate that. And I was going to ask you about when you'd have to run an emergency generator, but you answered my question, so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal. Thanks so much for answering our questions here. Many of us saw on a site drawing that showed a phase 2 for future expansion that was shown during some of these open houses on the quarters east of the proposed site. Can you elaborate more on your ambitions to expand? What does that mean for us? Thanks.
Yeah. I would say it was shown there as potential. There's no permits on the environmental or municipal side have been submitted, and we're not anywhere near the planning stages of submitting anything. There's not been any clients that have been asking for expansion either. So it's, I guess, truthfully more of a marketing item than an actual item in terms of expected expansion in that area.
Councillor Cook.
You did mention the sound umbrella, and can you explain a little bit more of the details about how data centers provide that natural sound barrier?
Yeah, and with all of this, I'm not an acoustics engineer. I'm a mechanical electrical engineer. I'm doing my best to understand the very technical documents and working with our experts. So the intention was the placement of the mechanical electrical equipment between the buildings. There's a fair amount of mass with the data centers themselves, the built-out metal insulated panels and steel structure. So the intention is that sound that is generated between the buildings would be reflected between the buildings and partially absorbed and ideally directed upwards. That was the intention. Obviously, the first model that we ran, which only had that in place, is the sound attenuation methodology did not work. Hence the additional measures that we've implemented.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. Thanks again. Can you elaborate on the testing regimen for the 600 diesel generators? Like, how long does one of these have to run during their testing cycle with 600 of them? I expect that one's going to be tested at all times, all the time. Thanks.
Yeah. So testing can always happen during the day. There's no need to do testing at nighttime. It varies. The regimens can vary. I'd have to consult with the report, but it is what we've put in there. I believe it's every 15 minutes, every 2 weeks. And then it's a quarterly longer run. But it would be what was included in the report as the testing regimen that we would be operating under.
Thank you. Councillor Kush.
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal, or it might go to CAO Williams, depending on how this question gets answered. Hypothetically, this whole thing gets built out, and you're not reaching the sound levels that are in the reports or required by the province. What avenue does a resident or a business that might be adjacent to you have to say, like, hey, this is not what we were sold? Through you or through the town, what avenue would they have to make sure that those levels are being preserved?
So I'm not familiar with the legal recourse that the AUC would implement. I do know that the AUC, this is our computer model is not the end state of the whole noise investigation process. As part of the construction and commissioning of the facility, we do on-site testing. There are means that we can continue to remediate sound. So if we find that we made a mistake in one of our noise assumptions on, say, like the first layer of containment, there are ways that we can implement additional sound walls or additional sound barriers around specific equipment that is creating acoustical problems. So I would personally not like to be at that stage where we need to contemplate that. And I think there are a number of measures that we can implement on our end before we would even need to look at having something like that happen in case there are mistakes in these models. I will say that the chillers and the generators, these are very common units that there's very good sound data available for those units. So the different octave levels and things like that are available from these manufacturers, and they've been tested. They're kind of like off the shelf pieces of equipment. They're not really custom. So I personally feel pretty good about that sound quality data. How does that react with the total environment? The computers kind of figure that out, but the source data there is, I think, quite reliable.
CEO Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Councillor Crucia's question. So with noise complaints in general, it generally falls under our community standards bylaw. We don't specify decibel levels in our CSB. It's something we struggled with when we passed in 2025, developing in 2024. For developments, though, this is where we build agreements, various set. To date, it's only been noise limits during construction, for example. In this case, given the scale of the development, that it's an AUC regulated property, and we have a noise impact assessment that our engineers are reviewing right now. The intention is to confirm Jason's data through our contracted expertise, rely on the AUC's assessment of that data as well, and through the development permit process, we would set upper limits, maximums for daytime and nighttime operating decibel levels at certain distances, I would assume. And that would be kind of the rules in place. Now, how we investigate or enforce those rules, just like everything else, we go on a complaint basis if we have suspicion internally or someone complains, but certainly should this data center become operational, we would do quality assurance, if nothing else, in the early days. We would ensure we have a calibrated device, and we test at various locations and to ensure that decibel readings are accurate. If they aren't, we have the municipal process in place, which we call a stop order. We can implement against the property, or notice to remedy is perhaps another term for it. Given this is also a regulated property under the AUC, there are avenues that way as well. But the difficulty is going to be that the AUC regulates noise on the gas generation, gas turbine side of the building. We regulate noise on essentially everything else. So we have to have a process in place to delineate between which noise is coming from which, and ensure we can enforce at a standard decibel level regardless of how we do that delineation between gas and non-gas noise. So it's new for us, but I believe with the AUC process, the noise impact assessment, prepared by an engineer, reviewed by our engineers, assessed and adjudicated by the AUC, we'll have a process in place for both the approval and the enforcement side.
Supplemental?
Yeah. Through you to CA Williams, from your understanding, does the AUC have a robust mechanism on their end to enforce those sound levels after the fact?
I can't speak to their enforcement side. I haven't. We have a meeting with them tomorrow morning, in fact, for the first time. So, part is get clarification on their Rule 007 or 012 about the post-operational role of the AUC and what that process looks like. I don't know at this point. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal. So we'll continue with this line of questioning around the sound, I guess. What's your thought, plan, or requirement in terms of steady state monitoring of noise and regulatory reporting their requirements? And this starts to tie in with the AUC, but I'm just wondering, are there going to be sensors throughout the facility in steady state that will provide real-time reporting that would then have to be submitted or acted upon? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely as part of the submission, especially on the air emissions side, there is active monitoring that needs to happen. I believe our proposal was for monitoring at the stack level. We do expect that the province will likely ask for us to monitor at the boundary lines of the property as well. And that's kind of one of, when I talk to our experts who have gone through this process before, it's kind of one of the items that the ministries will typically ask for us to do some type of monitoring, but we don't know exactly what they want yet. But it would be monitored. Yes.
Supplemental?
Sure, I'll just offer it as a comment. I know within oil and gas, and you're probably more familiar than I have, they have companies that come out and monitor air and or noise, right? And they will strategically move around a facility. I'm thinking of gas plants and processing plants, move around and take readings and so on. So obviously that could be part of the outcome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then if we do violate our thresholds, our monitored thresholds, we have a reporting requirement as well that we need to report that we've violated those, and they expect us to demonstrate remediation around how that will be resolved.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. And this question actually will go through to CO Williams. You've mentioned that we're meeting with the AUC, or you're meeting with the AUC tomorrow morning, and asking some of these types of questions. So will that impact then how we could participate in the AUC hearing, and would we be able, and how would we be able to, how is the town intending on participating? I know through Rocky View County, they're going through the AUC hearing process right now, and they've directed their administration to participate in that hearing. So if that makes sense to you, it's a little convoluted, but.
Yeah, and through the chair, thanks for the question. So the AUC and the meeting I have tomorrow, they will not discuss applications that are currently for the AUC. So it very much is more of a process-based application to help the town understand it, so we could inform council and, to our best of our abilities, the public on how that process is going to roll out. How the current process works for the town, we can register as an intervener in the project, and that is generally done with the intention to assure that the AUC factors in our main concerns with it, whether that be noise, attenuation, or emissions. Traffic control is a common one. Weeds can be a common one as well. I've had experience with it on the rural side of municipal government for wind farm development, but essentially something, it's not urgent. I'm not sure the timeline yet, but over the next few weeks we'll develop kind of a plan of what we think we could be intervene on, and council will decide if our concerns have been addressed, or we'll ensure the AUC is made aware of them. Right now I'm fairly confident we'll become an intervener just to have a role in the process, and that's a simple form submission that occurs online.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal. If I remember and read the noise impact assessment correctly, it talked about the used turbines or equipment from Indus and the Beacon project as kind of a proxy for your proposal. Could you talk a little bit about going forward? And they mentioned stage one, and I think the consultant, the Open Cycle Technologies, talks about like a 4-stage process. But can you talk a little bit about at what point does your proprietary design and tech specs and everything factor in? Because again, presumably, well, not presumably, you've referenced your goal is to be better than best, if I put words in your mouth. So how does your proprietary technology and equipment and turbines ultimately factor into the noise assessment.
Yeah, and so the reason you saw reference to the Beacon data center is because of the way that we're wrapping the building in the metal insulated panel. We don't have individual turbine enclosures. It's a contained space. It would be, similar to trying to model what is the sound emission from this room onto the outside of the wall here, and so we put the turbines in the building. Predominantly, the turbines are generating noise, but there's other systems in there, and that all gets kind of muffled and tied into the walls. Then there's items that kind of protrude out of the walls, like vents and things like that maybe require mufflers. And so the reason we're using that data is simply around, we have a design spec on that outside of the shell that we're going to adhere to, and so it matters less than with the generators or the chillers. It matters less what the actual unit specs are. It more matters what the spec of that wrapper on the building is that we're going to adhere to. So that's why you kind of saw that reference to the other project. My noise guys wanted something to reference, and I said, okay, we'll just use this other project, but we're going to be designing the building this way, which is what we saw on the power generation facility on the east side of Calgary that we visited. So we're using that model. Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. On the jobs, there's been quite a bit of skepticism on 1,000 jobs for this. The numbers that we've seen before, per 100 megawatts, 32 data center technicians, 10 natural gas plant technicians, 8 admin, and 50 staff from the client. These numbers are way higher than we normally see for other data centers, Bitcoin miners. What makes this data center different from those other ones that we're seeing these low employee numbers on? Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what size those facilities are. There's a multiplier that would occur the more building, the more units, the more staff that we required. So we're using the 100 staff per 100 megawatt ratio, and 50 of those are employees directly of ours, 50 from our customers. So more on the IT side of things, in terms of swapping servers and doing cable management for server racks. So I'm not quite sure where those numbers would come from other than crypto facilities, which are sometimes compared to these types of data centers. And they use similar amounts of power, but they're designed very differently. So yeah, and the numbers that we are using is the staffing model that I'd used in Montreal. So it's based on that. We didn't have people operating our natural gas plant in Montreal, so we've added that on top of the staffing model. And then the ratio that I'm using for our customer hiring, I've consulted with friends who have customers of this scale in their facilities, and I've asked, is 1-to-1 ratio reasonable, and they say it's normally 2-to-1. So I'm using 1-to-1 as a conservative figure in terms of their expected hiring, but yeah, that's how we've gotten to that number.
Any further questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal. So, been a little bit of discussion amongst and in the public around end of life. And I took a quick read of the application from Synapse through the Alberta Utilities Commission, and there is that section there on end of life and reclamation. Can you just talk a little bit about what the thought and plan would be? I'm not even sure what a expected lifespan of a data center and power plant would be. And again, if I read everything correctly, those are excluded as far as any reclamation. But can you give what your thoughts as a good neighbor would be around reclamation somewhere down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. Steel structure buildings, with metal insulated panel wrappers, which is effectively what we're building for the data center component. The life expectancy of those is about 100 years for that building itself. You'll have to go through things like replacing the roof lining and stuff like that, but the steel and the concrete and the panels on the outside, general life expectancy for that building. The equipment typically has a general life expectancy of about 25 years. Part of the design of these facilities that's being applied, I don't want to say globally, but at least in the US, is the modular approach that we're using with the chillers and the generators that are outside of the facility. So when it comes time to refresh that equipment, it's very easy to put in new ones. And so the layout of the facility, not only are we taking noise and emissions into account, but we're also taking into account how do we replace this equipment when the time comes to extend the life of the facility. So the equipment itself is 20 to 25 years. The building is 100 years. And then the intention is you refresh that equipment every 20 or 25 years. And you kind of continue going. Yeah. And in terms of reclamation, the AEPA does ask that we preserve soil, the topsoil on site, so that there's an ability to reclaim the site in the future. In conversations with them, they acknowledge that it's highly unlikely this location would, specifically given proximity to the town of Olds, would ever be fully reclaimed. It would likely become long-term permanent industrial if for whatever reason there wasn't a data center that needed to be there. So they're still asking for us to do some of the reclamation items, but kind of acknowledging that this facility is likely going to be a permanent fixture in the community, ideally a permanent fixture as a data center. The layout of the building itself, the steel structure, is very conducive to transportation, logistics, some type of manufacturing, long column spans. So if, we all stopped using computers one day, I would think it could be repurposed into something in the distribution or manufacturing space, but
Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Mr. Van Gogh. Going back to your drawings here, and you've shown us your berm landscaping, and I'm assuming that kind of is going to go along the southeast corner of the development. Is that correct?
A number of areas along
okay.
Highway 2A,
perfect.
extending up along 2A on the southern part.
Okay.
The municipality's asked for a lot of berms and a lot of trees.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I noticed here you've got coniferous trees in here. You will plant some deciduous trees as well, because they do offer tree canopy as well as they're good for
we're very flexible in terms of what the community would like to see on that account.
Okay,
I think coniferous
perfect.
is nice for year-round kind of noise and aesthetic.
Yeah.
But
well, no, that I understand. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for that, because I know that's one of the major concerns we had too was, the aesthetics of this development. Yes. So I do like these drawings if they're, for what you've done so far. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor
Thank
Wilson.
you. So, without getting into the minutia, so you're going to have potentially these 10 data center buildings. And I did take a drive out to Airdrie in the north end and look at the 1 or 2 data centers there. But so potentially you could have a client, a customer, a user occupying an entire building, or you could have multiple users in each building. And how many multiple users potentially could fit into a data center building, like one building?
Yeah, the intention for this site is maximum 1 user per building. So they would be large customers. The top 5 or 6 largest technology companies in the world, they typically look for locations that are able to support 1 gigawatt, because that's what they need for training these large language learning models. But it is possible that they may say, hey, we only want 100 megawatts or 200 megawatts, in which case the design allows for that. So you may have Google and Microsoft in town sharing the space, but not in the same building, in 2 separate buildings. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question just in regards to the construction phase, and just seeing the magnitude of the construction that's going to be taking place and the timelines that you have laid out. What is your initial thoughts and plans when it comes to the traffic, the dust, the noise, the construction timelines, and all that stuff as far as it goes forward? Is it going to affect our citizens?
Yes, absolutely. In the permit that we submitted to the AEPA, They specifically ask for construction management on those items. So dust, the intention is to install dust measurement devices on the site that would flag if we're above an accepted level. And then the first stage of that would require kind of watering to suppress the dust. And then the second stage, if it's a very windy day or something, would be to stop construction during that period. There are other things, in the construction kind of plan that we laid out in terms of maximum speed of trucks and other things that would, typically create dust to help manage it proactively.
So just supplemental then, so would you have the majority of your traffic coming in off of Highway 27, or would they be coming in off of Highway 2A? Would you know that at this point yet?
I don't know at this point. I think a lot of would be different types of traffic. There's excavation and fill that needs to come, right? So the larger gravel trucks. I think that would be probably like the largest part of the traffic. Then you'd have typical construction workers and showing up, which would be smaller vehicles, still enough of them, but smaller in terms of size. We don't have a plan laid out in terms of where the traffic should come from. We are going through the TIA, or will be going through the TIA process with the province. I'm certainly happy to ask if they have any input on where they would like to see that traffic orient from, and we can see if we can work that into a construction plan.
So, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. Thanks, Mr. Vangall. I know that this question's premature because we don't have building permits yet, but I'll ask it anyways. I kind of want to know more about what steps are being taken to mitigate light pollution. It's going to be 24-hour, 7 days a week facility. I'm just kind of concerned about just the blazing light that could be coming from this facility, just to make sure that these things are being thought about. Thanks.
Absolutely, and so is your planning team, and they've asked us for a light layout to demonstrate that we're appropriately lighting the facility. I did verify with some industry friends. Our security cameras don't necessarily require light around the entire perimeter of the property for security enforcement. So I would say there'll be lighting required for safety for people coming into site at nighttime because it will be a 24/7 facility. There would be lighting in the mechanical and chiller yards for people that need to do emergency maintenance if there's any that happens at night. I don't quite know how that would be set up. Potentially it can be off and then come on. That's something we would have to look at, but we'll certainly do our very best to limit light pollution.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. Just, I think this is my last question, but I'll hold tight. So you mentioned, you've built the 2 data centers in Montreal, and clearly there are data centers currently existing in Alberta here and more on the way. Just wondering, as far as the construct of this data center goes and its scale, is this a fairly routine standard project other than its 10 data centers and 1.4 gigawatt or whatever? Is this a fairly cookie cutter operation or build? And obviously there are EPCs like engineering, procurement, construction firms around that have built already. So there is the expertise, I guess, but this, from the complexity of this build and construct, is this at another level, like building the International Space Station, or is this pretty routine?
Part of the design of this project is how do you make a large facility more simple, I guess. And so the modular methodology that we've deployed in terms of each of the buildings are the same in terms of layout helps a lot with the complexity in terms of procurement and construction items. The layout of the building itself, let's say it's a long rectangle. Construction teams working on cranes have easy access from both sides because the buildings are nicely spaced out. So there are elements in the design that make things more simple than if you had a 2 million square foot airport building that you were building as an example, right? So a lot of the methodology that we've applied here, we've applied in previous projects, UPS room layouts, the chiller and the cooling yard layouts. Those are very similar and industry standard. The natural gas plant item is a new item for myself personally. We've got a great team of natural gas experts and engineers working on that. Yeah.
Councillor Kush.
I have, thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Mr. Van Gaal. I have one more question. You mentioned that these hyperscale guys like Facebook and Google want 1 gigawatt for their large language models. Hypothetically, the AI bubble bursts and those facilities are no longer needed. Can this thing be retrofitted for old school type of data center that's just a giant hard drive, or does that make it so that you're not profitable and you're gonna leave town? You know, this is sort of back to Councillor Wilson's end of life question. Thanks.
So part of the way that customer contracts work for this type of facility, it's a 10 or 15-year commitment from these large enterprises. The banks then finance against that large contract. The banks spend a lot of time and energy making sure that that contract is not something that they can get out of. So if a large technology company signs a 10 or 15-year commitment, even if the AI bubble bursts, they're still responsible for paying for the facility that they purchased. In terms of repurposing, the facility can accommodate CPUs and not just GPUs. It is located close enough to Calgary that, you know, there's other hyperscale clients that are already there. They could potentially extend their footprint to the site. It would be a fairly large site from a CPU only perspective, but it, from a technology design standpoint, it would accommodate it.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? All right, thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Van Gaal. I much appreciate it. We're not taking any questions from the gallery today. If you do have questions, please feel free to email Mr. Van Gaal through your own means, and or if you have questions for council, please send questions to council as well. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. All right, going back to our agenda then, I'll look for a motion. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. I move that council accept the presentation from Jason Van Gaal as information.
Thank you. All those in favor? It looks like that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that. So we'll move down now to item 4.2, Community Services, 2025 fourth quarter report. Turn it over to C.L. Williams for introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and Director Lapointe is with us today to lead us through his quarterly report.
Thank you, Mayor Daly and Council. I'm happy to present the Community Services highlights from quarter 4 of the past year. So the first page we're looking at here is the community development key statistics. You can see that the information referrals were up, and as well as partnerships and connections to other local organizations. Did see a bit of a decrease to subsidize housekeeping duties, but of course the counseling program went up, and substantial use of the Jean's Place as well as the community office. I should indicate that I'm open to questions along the way as well. Sorry. On to page 2, the cemetery sales actually were down substantially in Q4 compared to the previous year. That is kind of normal for cemetery. It's kind of peaks and valleys, not concerning overall for the year. We were up at the end of the year. And the Sunshine Bus trips were actually another success story again, with a 21% increase over the same period last year. Just a summary of the work that was completed in Q4 by the Community Development Department. Of note, the incredibly popular new Centennial Park lights installation and a significant increase to the sponsorships received for the kickoff Christmas were kind of the feature items here. The new community link worker is now in place, and we've begun making connections with corresponding community groups and agencies. The 2026 FCSS grant intake was open and recommendations finalized by the end of the year. You'll be seeing that later on in the meeting today. And the Community Connection Center's art and cooking programs continue to be popular and are helping drive social connections.
Mr. Lapointe, we do have a question on the floor from Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. And through to Director Lapointe. On the kickoff to Christmas, you say that it was that large increase, congratulations on that, was credited to a fresh approach to sponsorship. Can you elaborate a bit on that fresh approach, what that entailed? Thanks.
Through to Councillor Taylor. The fresh approach was kind of two things. Firstly, that event is normally a one-day event, and they expanded it into a 2 to 3 day event. The weather didn't really participate all that well that weekend, but it opened up a number of sponsorship opportunities. And we kind of looked at what the model was at this point and really changed how that looked. So there was opportunities to name separate events, an opportunity to name the festival itself. And so there was a multitude of opportunities for the sponsorship side of things, which led to that increase that you're seeing. So looking forward, FCSS is promoting our first community kindness campaign again in February right now, and summer camp registrations begin by the end of March. Social prescribing processes will be fully implemented, and the community development team plans to support, although I think it's actually already happened, the RPAP weekend showcase. Moving on to parks and recreation, we saw an increase use across the board, pretty much for the aquatic center. I think there was one area that decreased. And the utilization rate at the Sportsplex also edged up slightly, which is not a surprise. That's our busy time of the year for the Sportsplex. When we review the work that the parks team was doing, not surprisingly, the bulk of their time was spent with snow clearing and garbage removal. I did notice before I came in that there was a typo here. The garbage pickup actually saw an increase of 4%, not a decrease of 4%, offsetting some of the other decreases that we saw across the board. During the quarter, we introduced new facility and field rates. We had the ODR ready to roll a week earlier than last year, and we began the process of updating safe work procedures at the Sportsplex. The aquatic center was busy with special events and school swim lessons. In the upcoming quarter, we are hosting our annual Sports Fields User Group meeting. The aquatic center is leading some lifeguard training, and we do hope to introduce a new park space bylaw. There's 3 rather antiquated bylaws that we currently have. We're going to try to consolidate that into one. On the communication side, we continue to see our social media followers increase. What I would like to draw council's attention to is the Voyant Alert subscribers are now up to 334. That's a brand new software for us. At the beginning of last year would have been 0. 334 substantial. That service does have an emergency service focus, but is primarily being deployed for road maintenance alerts at the moment. The amplifier climbed to 653 subscribers, and it is still experiencing a strong open and click rate. Sorry, that's on the next page. This is just Yeah, that was just a summary of our numbers on the other social media platforms. This last quarter, we managed to push out the third of our Olds marketing videos, offered AI and website training to staff, and sharpened our focus on corporate communications. And for our first quarter plans of this year, we are releasing our annual report this week, finalizing the transit engagement effort, and sharing info on data centers in a clear and timely manner. With that, I'm open to any questions council may have.
Thank you very much, Director Lapointe. Councillor Kush.
This is less of a question, more of a comment. Back to the Christmas light up. I had so many comments on the actual lights, and I understand that you hired a third party, and I think that they did a great job. So, kudos.
All right, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Look at that. You must have done such a great job at presenting. You just dazzled us all. So thank you very much, Director Lapointe.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Wilson.
All right. I make the motion that council accepts the Community Services Quarterly Report as presented for information.
Thank you. Last questions or comments? None? All in favor? It's passed unanimously. Thank you very much for the information, and thank you to you and your staff for all that you do in our community as well. Thank you very much. Okay, that moves us down to 4.3, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, fourth quarter report. Turn it over to CAO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I have two parts to my quarterly report, as noted in the RFD. Asking for some formal direction on the ECDEV strategy engagement plan as well. So I'll run fairly quickly through this, as there's not a lot new that council hasn't been made aware of. And on the Invest Old side, those are our general activities and KPIs that we've seen. A lot of work the last Q4 into this quarter with the data center projects, both Synapse and the data district, so that has been keeping this team quite busy. We're quite pleased with our new business starts in 2025. We're seeing a 71 net increase. This includes things like home occupation or home-based businesses, for instance. So this number does fluctuate year to year. But even our permit values, if you recall from Director Pedro's presentation, are up across the board in the commercial and light industrial space. So we're hoping that 2026 does see increases both in permit value construction for commercial and industrial, in addition to the business licenses increasing quarter over quarter. And then year over year is probably our biggest metric, just because so many businesses do cease operating year to year. On Ledge Services, in Q4 was the election, which went well in spite of the new provincial changes. The bylaw and policy development since my last report, there hasn't been a lot, but we'll soon get started with policy reviews, which have to be complete. All policies are reviewed within council's 4-year term. We try to get that done a bit sooner than 4 years. Right now, the eScribe platform is working well on the administrative side. I know there are a few tweaks, certainly visually and operationally, we have to make for the end user, but it's going well for us in terms of streamlining some of our work on the back end. And with Ledge Services, they're doing a historical bylaw cataloging and digitization process. When the town's been in existence for 120 years, and unfortunately, we have bylaws that are that old in very varying forms of quality. So we have to tackle the to-do list and start cataloging and digitizing those and ensuring we repeal any bylaws that are in conflict or just not too many horse stands in town anymore, for example. But you'll see that report hopefully by the end of the year. Mountain View Power, a good year for Mountain View Power overall. We did exceed our growth target of both 4% net subscriber growth. But as reported in previous quarters as well, we're seeing margins decreasing despite the net new subscriber, and that's that's fully related to the electricity market in Alberta and how our profitability is calculated. But overall, it's strong performance. I believe the Community Grant Program, which is now approaching $400,000 in the last 3 years distributed to the community, in addition to the Storefront Improvement Program, there's a lot of good PR with Mountain View Power, and with all profits being returned to the community, I think there's a lot of things we can do to continue to market that and demonstrate its value. Just review of the 2025 sponsorships. We didn't expend all of MVP's sponsorship budget, but that's where it went. Some of it's approved by myself if it's under $500 and goes to council if it's over. That's council's general sponsorship budget, and same idea. Some come to me and some is approved by council, but those are the 2025 recipients, and that budget's near fully expended. For the OCAO office, some things we have as are wrapping up 2025 projects and initiatives. We have Invest Old's economic growth, not just with the data centers and the ECDEV strategy. They've made a lot of strides regionally, both through the conclusion and next phase of the Brood program, the RBSN, the Central Alberta First, and our EDAC committee, which continues to help us lead a lot of that. Our corporate and business plans got their first look at sunshine in 2025, and we hope to fine-tune those as council creates its next strategic plan. And then partnerships, the old fire hall and the men's shed partnerships were two of the most successful thus far, and certainly in 2025. And you have another one before you today, a new business that we think will be a good thing for the community. And the housing strategy. I think as Director Pedro reported earlier this month that 2026 tied 2025 for the highest housing starts on record at 130. We're seeing a lot of interest early in 2026, and our goal is to beat 130 housing starts in 2026. So we're hopeful that come this time next year, I'll be saying just that. Health and safety, as you can see, some are near misses, some are instances that through the organization throughout the year, but certainly in winter, slips, trips, and falls, and backing up are prevalent issues we have. And unfortunately, we're seeing recurring themes with abusive customers, I should call it, I guess, mainly at our front-facing facilities. So. I think it was one last time, I believe there's two, maybe three this time, and it's never great to see, but it seems to be the trend in society across the board, not just in local government these days. Reporter problem, as was trending throughout the year, we smashed our 2024 record. It was 778 submitted reporter problems, which is, obviously problems are never good, but they're inevitable, and we like that people are reporting them certainly more frequently. We don't think we had fewer problems last year or the year before. I think now with reporter problem, they're easier to submit with photos and follow-up. On the follow-up side, we always hope that we can do better and take that. I'll just get through this one second, Councillor Cook, and I think I have one more slide left. And that was the breakdown over just December's breakdown. Roads and sidewalks with the ice and snow. That's always a December concern. Water is also related to the freeze-thaw cycle, so they both get mixed in there. And also with our water meter replacement program, sometimes we take over some of the installations, and those get logged as reported problems as well. But December was a fairly quiet month outside of the roads and sidewalks, which when we ever get hit with thaw cycles in winter, everything spikes. And that's ahead for that part. But I'll stop here for questions before going into the ECDEV side.
Thank you, CEO Williams. I'll turn the floor over to Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to CEO Brent Williams. For the reported problem statistics, if two people are reporting on the same pothole, for example, will that show up as two instances of reported problem, or does that get summarized into one for the purpose of this reported problem data?
Good question through the chair. It will show as two separate reported problems. Yeah, we don't summarize, we try to give the bulk data.
Thank you. I have a question in regards to the storefront grant through Montview Power. We have had concerns in the past in light of our meeting that we had with the Olds Chamber of Commerce the past week. It was brought up there as well, and you know, just about limiting it to the uptown group and opening it up to the rest of town as well, just so that you know, we can make strides forward in the whole town, not just one area of the town. So I'll just want to know if we've made any kind of those attempts yet.
A good question. It's something that was asked at the original launch last year and again this year. The intention is to hopefully roll it out town-wide eventually. But the focus when it was pitched to council based on the City of Lacombe's model, but I think Main Street improvement programs are fairly common across urban centers like ours. The intention is to focus the dollars where they can make the most impact in these early years, is the logic. Main Street's not just a business center. It's also where we have places like Centennial Park, where the most walkable part of our community is. Our arts and culture tends to be based there. Most events tend to be in that area as well. So investing aesthetic dollars there seems to make the most sense. Now, I think there will come a time when it makes more sense to now open up to the rest of the community. But we're also doing that in a way because businesses that are Mountain View Power customers, regardless of where they are in town, are eligible to apply for this storefront improvement program as well. So we're trying to use that as an incentive to get more businesses signed up. Now, some issues will never be resolved. For instance, a lot of businesses aren't on town-fronted streets, so the aesthetic is not really our concern. For example, shopping plazas. We have a few of those in town. It would be tough to invest dollars in those areas because it wouldn't have the same purpose. That being said, council can at any time change the parameters of the program. It's a recommendation administration makes annually based on our opinion or our research. And certainly in the 2025 storefront improvement program, we had a lot of interest. We were far oversubscribed. So that shows that Uptown is still wanting these dollars, and combined with our belief that they're best make the most impact in that area, it continued that way. But yeah, absolutely. Hopefully it becomes so successful we can roll it out all over town.
Thank you. And just to comment, your points there about anybody that is a Montview Power customer, as well as those businesses that are part of a development lease type scenario are not eligible. That makes sense. And I really think that that may be part and parcel of the miscommunication that we're hearing out there. And maybe that's the first step, is to get those points out there and get them so people know who's eligible and who is not.
And to that comment, Mayor Daly, I guess I should also clarify, if it's sometimes things aren't as obvious. This doesn't come from business tax dollars or tax dollars. This is from profits generated from the customers of Mountain View Power. So it does make sense that we at least give those business customers the opportunity. But if people want to be included in the opportunity, becoming a Mountain View customer solves the problem right there. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to the CAO. Just towards the middle of January, both Councillor Taylor and I were approached by an individual who runs a home-based business concerning business license. And in this case, it was going to be a part-time operation, like 20 weeks, 50 hours in total for the month. Essentially, this individual's question was, and I know we have an allowance for a temporary license, 4 weeks. We have an allowance, if you're operating for half the year, you can get a refund or only pay half the license fee. The question was, would the town consider some type of an accommodation for a part-time home-based business? And I realize council can amend the bylaw if it so chooses at any point in time. But just wondering from administration's perspective, any challenges that would present? And have you heard that request in addition or other from other businesses, operators, home-based businesses for some type of a part-time business license accommodation? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. And through the chair, we have had one request, and we are looking into it. So the first question was on our software side, if we could accommodate that as a drop-down menu box and calculation, and we certainly can. So it's not an issue of us being unable to accept it. I think in theory, it makes total sense that we want people to be licensed, and the more opportunities and avenues we have to provide a business license that is affordable and matches the business's intentions makes sense. I haven't thought through the potential implications like enforcement, or because we operate on the honor system, but certainly it's something we plan on bringing forward to council in late this year when we are looking at 2027 business licenses. But yeah, if council wants something done sooner, the issue is business licenses, I think they're due this month perhaps, but it doesn't mean you can't amend the bylaw now and we can adjust our schedule to, say, new businesses that are coming in, let's say June or September, the same idea. But it's something we're looking at, and we're planning for the 2027 rollout for council to consider it. But I think it's a fair point.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments for CEO Williams? All right. Do you move on to item 2, or do you want us to make a motion on your first one?
I went fast. Yeah, you can make a motion on the report.
Okay.
Assuming that you
look for somebody to make a motion. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I move that council accepts the office of the Chief Administrative Officer, OCAO, quarterly report as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. Any further questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. I turn the floor back over to CEO Williams.
Okay. Thank you once again. And the Economic Development Strategy, which would be our first ever ED strategy. This was presented to council in October of 2025, the previous council, and to this council during the orientation process. So I'll try my best not to belabor the plan itself because everyone's heard it before. It hasn't changed that much. I believe it is an attachment to this agenda package as well for the public facing for the first time. But the purpose of today is just to confirm the engagement plan for the ECDEV strategy. Even though it was built on the Brood project and the regional strategy, which included 700 plus businesses, we want to give both local stakeholders and the public another chance to see what that final document looks like. But in addition to the Brood strategy, it was built on the housing needs assessments that we have done, plus the strategy, the commercial gap analysis or industry cluster analysis, and all the business and community surveys that were mixed in all those respective processes. So we do have a solid body of information coming forward right now to support the document. So it's based on 5 key outcomes that, at the end of 2030, we hope that we will reach a 70-30, what we call assessment-based split between residential assessment and non-residential. Our taxable assessment will increase to $2 billion. We will have added 620 new housing units. Our population would have increased to over the 5-year period by 5%, and approximately 125,000 square feet of new commercial space would have been built. So those outcomes are how we get to those outcomes. It talks about 7 pillars which match the Brood strategies research and how that analysis is conducted. And I believe it makes more sense as people read the strategy, and I won't get into them individually. But this is based on what business has told us are their challenges or their opportunities. So we're trying to align our work and our planning with those private sector needs as best we can. But to get specific, just to provide some tangible things, because talking about innovation or whatever buzzword might be, it's not quite as understandable for the person who doesn't live it. But we want to attract industry here. We need industrial tax assessment, and that includes agriculture, manufacturing, and AI. The three main categories Alberta has been chasing provincially. And when the province says, we're going after this, it makes sense for us to align ourselves with the province as they're directing resources, as in the AI data center push. It is very much provincially led at this point. We want to create an Uptown Olds revitalization plan. We want to increase event-based tourism, mainly through facility utilization at places like Rotary Park and the Sportsplex. We want to continue the rural entrepreneurship stream, which has been successful for us. That's the provincially led, federally allowed immigration program. We have been hearing, after I wrote this, that the rural renewal stream is getting a reformulation. That's where the town has a role in sponsoring individual immigration applications. We have suspended that for the last few months, but we have had word the province is going to readjust that, and we'll report back once we understand more. A brownfield redevelopment plan. Brownfield essentially means contaminated land, for the lack of a better term. We have the best examples on Highway 27 in Olds, where we have large vacant parcels of land that should be developed from a layman's point of view, looking at the rest of the development on the highway, but are not. So we want to understand what's preventing that development and hopefully incentivize or support developers in getting there. The Loblaws land development, we have now about 10 acres of land to the west of the No Frills grocery store. We do want to see a development plan presented to council for that, and ideas of how we can, over the next hopefully 5 years, get someone interested in building there. And you should see that in the coming 3 to 6 months. And then industrial plans, we have some servicing implications, especially in the Southeast Industrial Park. We want to create industrial park plans for both the Southeast and the Northeast and start marketing those accordingly. So with the engagement plan, the reason why I'm talking to you today, some of this has already been actioned very recently. Last week, the Chamber of Commerce Council did meet with the Chamber and introduced the strategy, asked for feedback, and we're awaiting that feedback. A similar method will be employed for all of these stakeholders. Uptown Olds, I believe, the meeting is set for later in March, perhaps. Olds College, I have reached out to the college to set a meeting sometime in late March or into April with their Board of Governors, which is an annual meeting we have, but we would like their input on that piece as well. And Mountain View County, through the ICC committee, that seems to be the most logical place to introduce this ECDEV strategy and ask for feedback. And it's not that we are going to include or to change strategy, but I think getting that community input once the plan's made and giving council the opportunity to have some sober second thought on the plan, it's never a bad thing. Also, the service clubs, where Mayor Daley and myself are meeting with our all clubs later this month as well. That might be early next month, actually, now that I think of it. Do the same thing, offer them the opportunity. Then once we have this individual stakeholders sought out and their feedback included, an updated draft will then be circulated to the broader community through online surveys, through the Coffee with Councillor sessions, and through Invest Olds' various channels and methods. We do hope to have a final draft to present to the council at the June Committee of the Whole on June 1st for final consideration. And then ideally formal adoption at a regular council meeting in mid to late June. And that's all I had for that. So any questions on the proposed engagement side? Are we missing anyone, or the methodology of how we're going to approach these people? So happy to take feedback.
Thank you for that. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks for dealing through to the CEO. Now, it's not about the engagement, unfortunately. I just have a question about if the proposed data center gets built, is that going to skew the goals so much and change the trajectory of the town so much that those goals become, I guess, not unrealistic, but just like a poor measure of our progress? Thanks.
Through the chair, good question. It'd make my goals look really good, in fact. But yeah, I think if the Synapse development goes through, obviously we would probably at least meet that projected 70-30 residential non-residential split. What's unknown right now and not spoken for in the ECDEV strategy is the franchise fees component, which we believe will be more of an impact on the data district development should that proceed. But short answer, yes. If one or both data center projects go through, we'd probably have to revisit the targets here before 2030.
Good, thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Need somebody to make a motion? Councillor Kirsch?
I make the motion that council approve the Economic Development Strategy Engagement Plan as presented.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much for that information. And look forward to the progress coming in June. Exciting. Okay, so it takes us down to item 4.4, Community Connection Center, 2026 Family and Community Support Services External Grant Recommendations. CAO Williams for introduction.
Yes, thank you once again. And Heather Dixon is with us right now to present council with the 2026 recommendations. Oh, sorry, Director Lapointe is with us today to present council with the 2026 grant
I'm going to
recommendations.
lead it, and Supervisor Dixon is here for any questions. So thank you once again, Council. Today, administration is presenting the 2026 FCSS grant allocation recommendations for your review and approval. For those of you who are new, FCSS is a cost-shared program between the town of Olds and the Alberta government, with the town contributing at least 20% and the province up to 80% of eligible service costs. Regional coordination with nearby FCSS providers, that being Matthew County, Carstairs, Cremona, and Didsbury, helps us to avoid duplication and ensures resources are used efficiently. Funding decisions are based on community need and reviewed by Community Development Supervisor Dixon to ensure projects meet the social preventative goals outlined in the FCSS handbook. Today, administration has recommended 10 applications totaling $59,530. And with that, Supervisor Dixon and I are available to any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Director Lapointe or through to Mrs. Dixon. With the Chinook's Edge Yes program, I mean, it's a great program, and we've donated a significant amount of funding to them for many, many years. Are these after-school programs accessible to all general public, or are they accessible only to those that are within the Chinook's Edge district? Because I think it's got some really good programming, and I know that the Yes program says it's inclusive for social inclusion, so I'm just wondering if that includes general public or just only Chinook's Edge.
So that will only be Chinook's Edge School Division because the application comes directly from Chinook's Edge School, and the Yes program has a partnership with Chinook's Edge School Division. If another school division, say the Catholic School Division or another private school, they could approach the program and see if there was something that could be agreed upon between the two school divisions. But I do know that they do work quite hand in hand at times with in our community with Holy Trinity, with different partnerships and with sharing of resources and things like that. But as far as the programs, they have to be Chinook's Edge School Division students right now.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Ms. Dixon. And just perhaps it was included in the RFD, and I missed it, but there's a $58.4 thousand. Does that represent the maximum amount of funds available to be distributed, or is there still dollars there that just didn't qualify to recipients? Thank you.
So that is the full amount that we have this year to fund out externally.
And to go along with that, then, what was the amount of application that you've got? Do you know that offhand?
The amount of like the total dollars, or
Total dollars that
I
was
do
applied?
not have that with me, but I can get that for
Okay,
you.
thanks. Just wondering what the need was, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, see none. You got off easy. Yeah. Would you like to make a motion?
I move that council approves 2026 FCSS grants as recommended.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Then I'll ask for who's in favor. That is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Takes us now to section 5, business 5.1. I'll turn it over to CO Williams for introduction.
Thank you once again, and Development Officer Hill is to my left to walk us through this DP application. Nate.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The application for us today is for a maximum front yard fence height variance at 4098 50th Ave, which is a designated future urban reserve district. As a variance is over 15%, council's a development authority for this application. The applicant is asking for a front yard fence height of 6 feet or 1.83 meters. Rationale for a variance is provided in the RFD. The reasoning for a fence height maximum of a meter in the front yard is because of crime prevention through environmental design. The idea is eliminating visual barriers in the front of properties, enabling neighbors to watch out for each other, basically. In this instance, it's an isolated parcel where a passive surveillance enabled by this height maximum doesn't really exist. Administration circulated the application to all adjacent parcels, and we did not receive any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Any comments, questions? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. And to Director Hill, I guess my question is, I'm not entirely sure what it is I'm approving here because I don't know what the fence is going to look like. And I think that matters materially when it's this much above the height variance. They say that one of the rationales was to protect against overspray. So now I'm envisioning something that's completely opaque and solid. Like, is this going to look like a castle wall outside of their front yard? And I just have some concerns with that, like not really knowing what it is I'm saying yes to here. Thanks.
Excuse me. I believe it's a board fence, although I don't have that in a writing from the applicant. So.
Any further comments or questions? Myself, I can see this being relevant on two sides of the property, as indicated in the attachment on the north and on the west side, when they talk about reducing the risk of overspray and wildlife getting into their yard and so forth. But the south and the east side, the front of the property, I'm assuming they're going to have a gate there. So when it comes to trying to keep the wildlife out, I don't know what's there, but this is just some of my concerns. That the same as what Councillor Taylor's saying, is that this is going to look like a big board fence in front of a castle. So I'm just conscious of that. That's all. That's my opinion. Any further comments or concerns? Not hearing any. Then I'll ask for somebody to make the motion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I make the motion that council approve development permit 2026-0016, subject to the conditions outlined in the attached document.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess I just have problems approving this without further information, just in light of how much higher this is going to be. If there's some way that we can get some more information on the aesthetics of it. Again, I think it matters at this point. I don't feel comfortable approving this otherwise. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? 2. Opposed? It is defeated. Thank you for that. All right, 5.2, Humane Society lease. C.O. Williams.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll lead this one, and he's here to answer questions as he helped draft the lease as well. As was presented at February's Committee of the Whole, the Old Humane Society, a recently formed organization, has made great strides in recent months, from actually starting to foster animals among their volunteer base, growing their volunteer base, and even partnering with Olds College on getting their animal tech students to support things like vaccinations and spay and neutering. One thing that they're missing is a space to operate in these early days, and lo and behold, we have the former municipal enforcement shop that we cannot dispose of in the same way we look to transfer to other organizations or sell, as it's attached to a North Reservoir. So this lease speaks to this open-ended agreement for a nominal sum of $1 a year, where it's structured around similar agreements we have with, whether it be the old fire hall or the Evergreen Center, where the town essentially remains responsible for the envelope of the building, the roof and the foundations, and the leaseholder takes over responsibility for the interior of the building, including the operational costs. I'm sure council had the opportunity to ask questions, so I won't go any further into the purposes of the Old Humane Society as was presented in earlier February. This lease is in draft form. It may get it will get amended slightly to talk about things that may not be captured here, but all we're asking for today is council's permission to enter into a lease, and we'll finalize negotiations with the Old Humane Society if that is acceptable to council.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to C.O. Williams. But although I have no objections to the Humane Society whatsoever, that is not my concern with this. The only question I have and concern that came to my attention here is that we would lease this facility for $1 only that is the concern I have. In the past, I know not with this council, but in particular the past 2 councils I sat with, there was many concerns raised with other town-owned facilities that we had, that we were maintaining and doing the maintenance on these buildings, but they weren't paying any significant rent back to the town. So that is my concern with this. So I hope that maybe we could have another discussion on this at maybe at a later date or as we finalize this project, because I think that $1 getting away with an awful lot for not a lot of money.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, that's a fair comment. I do believe that the last council talked several times without providing direction. I guess a larger review of our town facilities in relation to the revenue generated versus the cost that we incur. To best of my ability, the only third-party facility that pays us anything more than a nominal sum is the campground, which it depends on their annual revenue, which is a formula in the agreement, but I believe we get around $10,000 on average per year from that lease. With the proposed Humane Society lease at the former ME garage, or the Evergreen Hall, or the old fire hall, or the men's shed, it's structured as a nominal $1 lease. But if we do a future review, we can look at if it makes sense to make it profitable. But I would say even now, we did complete the roof repairs, which were budgeted in 2025, a couple weeks ago. We're already paying for the utility costs on this building, so I do believe it will be a very small but net decrease to our current operational spend through giving it to someone else, and hopefully, from operational and providing us with an option to bring stray animals or captured, abandoned animals as well in the future. But point well taken. I think a larger review of our facilities and third-party operating facilities is probably in order eventually.
Thank you. I would appreciate that, because as it stands today, I'm not really comfortable with the $1 lease, but I understand the logic behind it per se.
Yeah, thank you for that information. And one thing I was looking for when I went through the lease, and I don't see it there, and it's probably not an appropriate place for it, but you mentioned about having a place for our strays and abandoned animals and so forth. Would it be appropriate to have OLS as the priority? Because of course there is several other communities around us that do not have a facility like this, as we investigated before. I just would hate to see that we do this. We lease them the building, and then we end up holding on to our own strays because they don't have capacity. So just looking into the future to see if that's something we could actually work in. Then this idea of $1 lease, now we're getting a service in return of, which looks a lot better than just they're paying $1.
Yes, very good point. And similar history with the old fire hall lease. The leases themselves, which is very similar to this, referenced a future MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, to be created amongst the lessees in that case. And that's our intention here, which we will probably add similar language. But for a lease agreement for a building, like you said, Mr. Mayor, is not the best place to talk about operational things like that. But we do plan on creating an MOU. That's one of the topics, giving the town at least assurances that we will have space available. Another thing, like endeavors to assist the town with, let's say, grant applications to improve the structure of the building. Something we included in the old fire hall lease and the men's shed lease as well, just because charities and nonprofits have access to different grant streams that we don't have access to. So we want to work in collaboration and get their assurances that they will work in collaboration with us. And I believe there's also going to be some language around, I think the map on here, we're going to lease a small sliver of the side yard for a dog run. And we're going to talk about, maintenance considerations as well of that leased grounds also. And so a few things will be in a future MOU as it gets negotiated. But to your point about assuring that we have space is one of those. Yeah,
excellent. Yeah, I didn't realize there was going to be an MOU that had accompanied this, so that is good news. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable with this lease. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, through you to the CAO. Just, I think along these lines. So the use of this building, I guess I'm asking you to read tea leaves and palm reading and everything else, your crystal ball. The use of this building likely fairly limited. And you talked of the roof replacement. Is there anything else looming as far as the envelope of this building that will require investment to maintain it and keep it in sound operating condition? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And through the chair, nothing urgent, but Window replacements will be one thing, overhead door replacements, and then facade improvements, I think, are things on our radar. They're not imminent, but we would like to earlier than later have, grant applications prepared to certainly improve the quality of the building, but also make it a little less ugly based on its location as well. So those three things are, I think, the only thing outstanding from our end.
Yes, supplemental?
Definitely, truly, yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Supplemental, so again, not sure it's part of the lease or perhaps the MOU, but I know there's the clause there, I think it referenced 6-month notice for termination by either party. How or where would we capture things, or would we at all, in terms of the tenant restoring the interior of the building to its condition now, whatever it is? Because I think of a shelter, so there's going to be kennels and whatever else in there. Is that an expectation that we would have in some document, that if they move out for whatever reason, it gets restored to a empty type shell or whatever's in there now? Thank you.
Yeah, a good question, and through the chair again. Short answer is yes. The more honest answer, it's pretty bad inside right now. So it's going to take them quite a lot of effort to make it usable for them. So I think if, say, it's in the first 5-year agreement phase, that any state they leave it in is going to be better than the current state. So it's not a big concern, but certainly I think as the lease progresses, if we see another 5 years ask coming forward in 2031, that would be more of a consideration, because then you get into wear and tear and animal, whatever animals might leave behind long term. But I don't have a concern right now with that.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none then, I'll ask for a motion. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Day. I move that Council directs administration to negotiate a lease agreement with the Olds Humane Society.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions? Councillor Cook.
Thank you. And through you to CEO Williams, does the MOU get brought to council before it's presented to the Humane Society?
No, not generally.
No.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? All right. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Okay, takes us down to the RCMP 5-year resourcing and priorities plan. I'll turn it over to CEO Williams for introductions there.
Thank you once again, and Director Andrew is with us today to give council the overview here. Just I'll give you the mouse. I have to step out for a moment.
Okay, thank you. So here we're proposing, oh, seems loud, bringing forward from previous conversation about the RCMP 5-year resourcing plan. Was discussed about the growing needs in the detachment and looking for the increased staffing resource to help alleviate some of the pressures of the policing in Olds. In a combination of the public safety employees being admin and or adding regular members or constables to the detachment contingent. So as the request brings today is that we are seeking council's approval to add a regular member to the contingent for the 2027 budget year. And the whole premise of by doing this early is that typically when these positions are filled, it takes upwards of a year to get the position requested and then resourced through the channels of the RCMP. So this is being progressive in the fact that we know that we're adding housing starts to the town, looking at commercial and industrial development, and we're seeing an increase in the demand on the RCMP members with file count. And so trying to just get ahead so that we're ready for 2027 with a fresh face and boots on the ground. So with that, I'd take any questions that you would have.
Thank you, Director Andrews. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to Director Andrew. Regular member, it's going to have an estimated cost of about $185,000. It says inside the rationale that we expect for reduced overtime and on-call costs. Did you have a dollar figure that you could share with council that would actually illustrate what kind of overtime and on-call costs we could expect to save with a regular member?
I don't have that figure in front of me. The hard part with our RCMP is that their year-end financials don't match with ours, so we're still operating in the 2025 until I think it's April. But essentially what we look for is that when we have members off on short-term leave for various reasons, whether it's even just a casual illness or injury or anything like that, if we can't maintain our staffing levels, then we do have to hire overtime members to come from other detachments. And when they come in, you have to pay them the overtime rate for the entire shift. Plus you have to pay their travel from wherever they're coming in a mileage. And then you also have to give them a per diem for meal allotment. And then depending on the type of shift, whether it's an overnight or day shift, there is times that you do have to pay for accommodation for them to stay as well. So some shifts can be quite expensive. On a night shift, you could be looking at upwards of $1,500 to $2,000 based on where the member would come from for that shift, as an example of what an overtime cost would be. So that's the closest statistic I can give you on that based on the question that I have.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to the director. I have a couple questions. This one being, you mentioned there's a lead time required to, I guess, post this position and recruit and get somebody in. So I'm not sure if there's a possibility this position would be starting in 2026 or 2027. I'm trying to think back to the Staff Sergeant Day's presentation early February. In terms of, I think we have 8 regular members and we have 3 on leave. I can't recall whether we have hard vacancies or not. The gist of my question is there a potential for a budget impact or a cost impact in 2026? Or is this truly going to be setting the stage for the position, the boots on the ground, January 1, 2027? Thank you.
Yeah, to answer that, so our staffing contingent is 11 regular members in the detachment right now. And so with this request going forward is that there is the ability, because with a soft vacancy, soft or hard vacancy, once we aren't paying for a member, so somebody that's on, long-term leave, they come off the collator, so we actually don't get charged their salary. And because we do have, I believe, 3 members right now that are all in soft vacancy status, that money is essentially retained by the municipality. So if by chance that we were lucky enough that a position was made available or an officer was made available earlier than the January 1st, we could potentially get that individual in place, and it wouldn't have impact as in requesting more money from our budget. It could be handled with what's already allotted currently, just because we're not paying with those vacancies. So again, not paying any more, but we could get that member early. Again, knowing the circumstances with the staffing in the RCMP, generally the likelihood of that happening is, I don't want to say impossible, but it's certainly miracles happen, I guess, every day. So we'll just see how that would work.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Director Andrews, like in your presentation, you talked about bringing on another regular member in 2027. The plan that's in front of us does go up to 2030 with an impact of over $500,000. And the motion that we're looking at, of course, is to approve this plan. And so is it something that we should bring forward to council for the whole scope of this plan going forward? As we vote on it today, that means that we're accepting all the details within it as well. with the additional of administrative position, another member, and also capital investment of the police facility as well. Go ahead.
Thanks. Mayor Daly, I'll clarify there. So the reason why there's two motions there is because of the regular member and the time we're projecting to get a regular member for 2027. Everything else in the plan would be an annual budget consideration for council. So even though you present asking to approve the plan today, which again, if you want more time with it or a different timeline, it's not urgent if you chose to table it. But outside of this regular member addition in the second motion, everything else would then be integrated into further budget asks, and council can decide to deviate from the plan if, for whatever reason, like there's money better spent elsewhere or the situation changes as well.
Thank you for that. And so should we maybe put that we accept the RCMP 5-year resourcing priorities plans as information, and then move on to the next one, because I think that's really where we need to go today to get the process going and to get our application into the RCMP executive. Is that a plan, or should we stick with what's here now?
Yeah, the 5-year plan here is it is going to be council's plan. It has no bearing on our relationship with the RCMP. The idea why it was presented here, and it's actually, I believe, mentioned perhaps in the corporate plan and a little bit in the housing strategy, that as the town grows, we want to make sure we're understanding that growth. So this is really two things: a communication tool to the public that we can show that we are recognizing that the RCMP resources are a major part of town growth. They're interconnected. And then it's also council's direction to administration to, as we're preparing budgets and financial forecasts, this is what we want to have included in our 2027 or 2029 budget asks as well. It can totally be amended or deviated from based on council direction. So I think if council doesn't want to pass it today, it's just because you want more time with it or you want something added or deleted from it. I would say the purpose still is sound, that not just with RCMP. We want to try to get better planning in place for a variety of things. The ECDEV strategy was one example a moment ago. The playground replacement plan was another one. The Centennial Park plan that Director Lapointe presented on is another example. Doesn't set anything in stone. So I would say, certainly, if you want to accept as information, provide direction on what changes you'd like. And then the second motion, I think that's the one that is a bit more, hard to take that one back, so to speak. So that is a commitment.
I agree 100% with you. I just don't want to see us tie our hands, so to speak, right, and go forward with this as the definite plan. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and although I understand your concerns, accepting this plan today is something I think that gives us a general idea going forward, what we potentially are going to need to budget in the future. And some of the concerns I've heard, particularly with our new potential development, the data centers coming in and the influx of workers and either temporary or permanent workers, one of the concerns was RCMP, and I really think that this has got to be a priority that this council does review on a regular basis through the budgetary process to ensure that we are adequately staffed and that our people are protected at all times. And I'm quite comfortable accepting it today as presented and moving forward with an additional RCMP office, knowing the timelines. So.
Oh, we're speaking the same language here, Councillor Blatt, so it's all good. I just wanted to ensure that we're not tying our hands in some way and making promises to the RCMP staff sergeant in regards to what future plans there are for expansion of the RCMP detachment. So, okay? Yep. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. Through you to the director, and just the comment. And we've talked about it before, and I guess my reticence to some degree, and again, we have talked about this, is so we have the cost sharing model. I think it's 70-30 federally and municipal for the cost. further to that, though, we hire a member, and that member will go wherever the need is, right, within our area. So it's not like we're going to get guaranteed 100% dedicated support to criminal activity within our town. They will go to within Mountain View County, or basically whatever in the surrounding area they need to go. So that's a little bit of my caution there. And then my question is, and if you want to comment to that, certainly. And then my question is, as far as our service level, enhanced service level, we know growth is happening, whether it's going to be through industrial or just through residential growth and multi-dwelling units and so on. How does this move the meter in terms of our service level and our daily flexibility around daily police scheduling and everything else? If you can comment to that, thank you.
Yeah, so I can speak to both things briefly. As far as allocation of resources, ultimately it's up to our detachment commander as to where he sees fit that the service is provided, and yes, there is the basis that it can be, the position could be responding to rural, provincial related matters or municipal. But the premise is, I guess, the thing that really drives this is I have this statistic in front of me that it's not in the presentation. The file count by year in 2023, the RCMP detachment had 2,607 files, and in 2025 they had 3,222. So you can see an increase of approximately 600 files in a very short period of time, and that is the growth that they're seeing. So as far as your service level impact, this extra member is essentially maintaining the service. There might be a little bit of efficiency because with the added public service or public servant position that was approved for this year, again, we're trying to streamline so that those clerical type positions are taking some of that administrative load off the constable so that they can be out patrolling. The reality is that if we see the housing materialize that's in production right now and the industrial commercial growth, we're probably going to see this file count do another jump again. It wouldn't be surprising to see it jump by 400 or 500 files in a year when you bring that kind of activity to town. So this very much is maintaining. It's certainly not enhancing. The one thing I will say is the plan that the detachment commander has with this position, if it were to materialize sooner than later, is that he would use it in a split capacity to augment a few of the areas of need. We definitely would utilize a second person to help with crime reduction initiatives. So our crime reduction specialist that we have does need to operate with a second member to facilitate a lot of the activities that he's doing. And so this position in general could help with that. It could also be broken apart and allow some constables to do more traffic enforcement initiatives and also to do community resource type positions. So it wouldn't be the same constable doing all of that work. It would be an extra body that would allow the current constables that we have here that like specializing in different areas to do their area. Where you have this person added to the roster today, then that would allow the commander to say, okay, I want you to go off and do your traffic thing for the day. And they would do that, or you give the extra person the time to go into the schools or do some kind of a community engagement function. So it would be a jack of all trades for sure, and it's just one more resource in the bucket that would help us attain that.
Excellent, thank you. Supplemental?
Yeah, just could you repeat those file count numbers again? You gave the 2 years or whatever. Could you just repeat them again? Thanks.
Sure. So in 2023, the file count was 2,607. And I'll even give you 2024's number was 3,057, and 2025 was 3,222. So that's a fairly substantial increase. It was 5.4% increase in 2025 from 2024. But we see numbers. If we date it back even to 2021 and 2022, we were looking at 2,400 and 2,300 respectively. So the number has gone up substantially, and the reason that the counts were low in those 2 years was typically coming out of COVID. There was people at home, and so a lot of emergency response agency numbers were down pretty low, including fire. So,
any other questions or comments? All right, see none. I feel comfortable in making the two motions, but we'll make them separately. Councillor Kirsch.
I make a motion that council adopt the RCMP 5-year resourcing and priorities plan as presented.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And now for the second motion. Councillor Taylor.
I move that council make a request to the federal public safety minister for an additional regular municipal member for the RCMP.
Thank you for that. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? That is unanimous as well. Thank you very much for all that information, Director Andrews, and all your time put into this as well. All right, so that takes us down now. 5.4, 2026 Chief Administrative Officer Evaluation Process. Okay, so this one, of course, we, through the MGA, we are to complete a CAO evaluation process. And at the end of last council session, and I mean like back when the last council was in place, we did talk about bringing in a facilitator to help with this process. Being that it is a time now where all of us, a lot of us are new, I feel this is a good time to renew the process as well. And to have a facilitator come on board, this facilitator would be able to ask questions that we cannot answer. And that was one of the things that answer or ask. That was one of the things that the last committee on the CAO evaluation came up against. We did not have the ability or the answers to all the questions that were asked of us. And so having a facilitator on board to, first of all, to update the process, and to also to be able to get a wholesome picture of the CAO's evaluation, that is why it was recommended to bring on a facilitator. The second part of this is to determine whether it's going to be a committee or all of council that goes forward and participates in this activity. We can have a committee of 3, whoever would like to step up to help out with this special meetings duty, and or all of us can step up and be part of the committee as well. So these are things that we need to discuss today and determine. We need to have this process done by the end of May. I think May 28th is the date that we need to have our findings back to CAO for his review. So I'll open it up for discussion and we'll go from there. As you can see in your agenda package, there's Model 1, Model 2, Model 3, and so we need to figure out which direction we're going to go. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and although I was unsure how we should go with this process, but I believe if we're going to do the facilitator and help us with the actual process itself, I believe it would be in the best interest to have all of council sit through the evaluation process so they understand how the evaluation works and what we should be looking for. If we're going to go with a council of 3 members, then 3 of us should step up and then maybe next year look at a facilitator. But we've already budgeted to have a facilitator come in and assist us with the process. So I would like to see us have all of council be part of this process for this year alone. And maybe going forward, we could look at committees, members of 3 to evaluate our CO during our term. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. We'll just go around the table. Councillor Krusch.
I agree with Councillor Blatz. As a new person on council who has never performed an evaluation on anybody for any reason in my life, I think that a facilitator would be helpful. Whether it's full council or a committee of 3, we can decide that. If it is a committee of 3, I would put my hand up to join that committee. But yeah, I think a facilitator would be beneficial, at least for this first year, so we can kind of get our ground underneath us and understand the process a little better.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I have a variety of feelings with this, and certainly I think we've indicated $10,000 potentially for a facilitator. So if we didn't do a facilitator, we could certainly allocate that 10,000 elsewhere within our within the town budget. Having sat through the sessions, the evaluation sessions previous term, they are kind of a little bit cumbersome, a little bit awkward at times. I think we've made strides as a group of council doing the evaluation. So I certainly see the value and the benefit of getting a facilitator, getting a wise practice or best practice, and being able to bounce things off of an independent third party, if you like. Because again, our process certainly evolved last year through the work of a few solid folks, such as Councillor Blatz, I know, with our question or with our evaluation form. And I think there's still some work to do to further streamline that. And then the other thing you look at as well is continuity. And nobody knows what the world will look like 4 years from now. But if you can get a nice process and a good solid process in place that's basically people independent, it just makes the next term of, or for the next council term, a little bit easier perhaps for them to continue on. Again, recognizing that it's every council's perspective and purview to make changes. But I would certainly support at the end of the day the facilitator and having all of council involved. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, I just want to clarify that this would be for this year only. And this would give us some new ideas and some new tools to be able to use going forward for our next 3 years, because this is an annual event that takes place. And so with having the facilitator, they would show us and they would give us some tools to use going forward. So, all right, thank you. Councillor Cook.
I'm an advocate of Model 3, going without a facilitator. I don't think spending funds because it's been budgeted is a rationale to spend those funds. The toolkit provided gives a lot of helpful framework so that we can do this as a council, and I think we're cohesive enough as a unit that we would be able to proceed without a facilitator. I also have a few apprehensions about what kind of actionable changes we would have having a facilitator versus not having a facilitator. So our bang for our buck per se for $10,000 may not actually be there.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. I would support Model 2 selfishly only if I could be one of those 3 council members. So I think that's why it makes sense to go with Model 1. I would echo Councillor Krusch's comments about some apprehension about going into this process. So I think a professional facilitator would help us at least in this first year. I would be really open to Model 3 perhaps later once we've kind of gotten our feet under us with us being new, and I think that we need to be applying a appropriate amount of scrutiny on our CAO Williams, so a facilitator could help with that. Thanks.
That almost sounded sinister. An ample amount of scrutiny. To remember that. Very good. Myself, I am opponent of model number 1, with all of us working together to give us all the experience of working with this facilitator and doing an evaluation process, so that when we go into year 2, 3, and 4, we all have the experience behind us, and that we are all, as you say, cohesive in what was done in the past, as well as what we're looking forward to do into the future. So with that, that is a 4-2 count for number 1 model. And so I think with that we can move ahead. Is everybody comfortable then to move ahead with model number 1 where we use full council with the assistance of a professional facilitator. Is everybody good with that? Go ahead, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. And with that, then, are you going to want two separate motions? First motion reading that council moves to use Model 1, and then the second further that council directs administration to provide 3 quotes for a facilitator, or would it be one full motion with Model 1 incorporated with further?
I think it'd be 2 separate motions so that we have it recorded properly on the minutes. Are you in agreement with that, CEO? I'd seen you were going to say something.
I think we have it as one in our system, so I think if you just do as one, which should be fine.
Do it as one? Okay. Yep. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, do I have somebody who would make that motion? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I move that council accepts Model Number 1. Full council shall act as evaluation committee with the assistance of a professional facilitator, and further that council directs administration to provide 3 quotes for facilitation services that targets a completion date of May 25th, 2026 to ensure compliance with the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you. You had to work for that one today, didn't you? All right. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? One opposed, 5-4. Thank you. All right, so that takes us down to council reports, item number 6. I think everybody has submitted a report. I'm just getting down there now. Councillor Taylor, you submitted yours with a hyperlink. So you can see there that Councillor Taylor's is up in the RFD. And just a note to the rest of the councillors, we will have a tutorial that we will have everybody doing theirs on a hyperlink like that going forward then. So just a little heads up there. I think everybody's put theirs in. Yep, everybody's there. Councillor Overwater, of course, is on vacation, so. Any questions, clarity, anything? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daley. I just wanted to highlight the meeting that I had with the Gravel Road project. I met with Olivia and Alex. The Gravel Road project, like from their website here, their mission is to bring contextually relevant place-based civics education to rural communities across the Canadian prairies so that people can regain a sense of agency in our democracy. So they're just reaching out mostly to youth to try to get them engaged in politics, nonpartisan. I think that they were a great group, and I really enjoyed the meeting. And after the meeting, they decided to host a barbecue and town hall sessions in Olds this summer, and they're going to be looking at setting up at the farmers market. So I'd encourage people to look for them at the farmers market coming up here. Thanks.
Good, thank you for that bit of information. Councillor Cook.
Just looking for some clarity because I see some of our reports mention just regular council meetings and some don't. Should these be included in these reports if they are just scheduled regular council meetings?
Look to guidance on this, but normally we do not include the regular council meetings in our reports, is how I've been directed in the past. Same as committee of the whole meetings as well. Councillor Blatz?
Well, unfortunately, I've never been given that direction, and I include them only strictly so that people know that I am actually attending. And I mean, either way, I'm good, but to me, it's just an extra line that I just leave on there, so. I mean, I'd just as soon leave it myself, but it's up to each individual councillor.
Yeah, I think it's 6 to 1, half dozen of the other, and if you feel you want to include those, feel free, right? You bet. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none then, could I get a motion to accept them? Councillor Cook.
I move that the reports from council, boards, committees, and commissions ending February 23rd, 2026 be received for information.
Thank you very much for that. Any further comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Brings us down to item number 7, correspondence information. Looks like we have a letter from our Rural Health Professions Action Plan. And then we also have a letter from multiple citizens in regards to the data center proposal. And CAO Williams, you'd like to speak to these?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Daley. Just to introduce the correspondence, we have done it a bit different. There's only 2 correspondence items. The second one's quite large, but I'll speak to that as well, if I can figure out how to zoom in. But anyways, I don't have to. The first one is more of a success story here, and it involves both our local Olds and Area Health Professionals Attraction and Retention Committee, which is funded by Mountain View Power. Earlier this month, they hosted, through RPAP, the provincial agency, but I think it was 33 health professionals in Olds, future physicians, I believe, brought them to town, toured them through the community, hosted various events with them, and I believe, Mayor Daley, you attended that event as well. The feedback, which is in this report, was very positive on both their experience at the event and their overall impression of Olds. We got to get some, insight on the barriers to rural practice that these future physicians see in Olds. And I think it's going to be a valuable tool for us going forward. I'm not sure if we recreate this every year, given the logistics and the cost and the volunteer effort required, but certainly periodically would be a great idea. Working with our clinics and the hospital and the committee and the volunteers, I think proved dividends here. And with the Mountain View Power piece, it's great to see another example of those dollars going to very practical use for the community. But that's all for that piece. And then the second, much larger item was the correspondence we have received up to the cutoff of late last week, I believe. We have been cataloging all of the responses, some from the public hearing that came through planning and development. That happened on February 9th, and then general correspondence that Mayor Daley has been responding to. So if you click the hyperlink, you can see everything we had up until the cutoff date. We'll have more coming forward on March 9th, but essentially correspondence. Both people in support, more so people opposed, and some people generally curious, asking questions about the development, mostly the Synapse development, obviously. And we encourage people to reach out. And I think the themes of these letters, it's hard to ever judge an overall public sentiment towards anything, because the people who support something who are ambivalent generally don't reach out in the same volume or scale as those opposed. But the message remains the same, that the town of Olds has been trying to attract data centers here for the better part of a year, that we want them built here, but only if they can be built responsibly. And the vast majority of the issues contained in most of these letters are around the potential harmful impacts. Noise and emissions being the 2 most prevalent, as Mr. Van Gaal alluded to today. And it's our response, and you can read them in Mayor Daley's responses, but as you've and us have talked about, it's not that we're discounting those, it's just those have to go through proper assessment channels, and that's what's being done right now. There is an emissions model study or air quality assessment. There is a noise impact assessment. Those are being reviewed by our engineers, and they'll be assessed by the Alberta Utilities Commission in relation to the overall scope of the project. And if the project is not suitable for the area where it's proposed, it will not proceed. But I believe our message to constituents on this has been that we want to see the information first. We're not willing to kill a project without having that information in place. But if it can be done safely without adversely impacting the community, then it should not be done at all. But we're not in a position, no one is in a position to adequately judge that. disliking something and saying that something is bad is not the same thing. And we need information on all accounts right now. And that's what we're going through at the moment. So that's all for correspondence.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't stress enough that we have to make our decisions on facts, not on fiction. So, and hearsay. So, yeah, if you ever have a few minutes that you want to just read through some correspondence there, help yourself. So, is there any questions or comments on the correspondence? None? Okay, could I ask for a motion then? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. I make the motion that the correspondence and information report ending February 23rd, 2026 be received for information.
Thank you for that. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Brings us down to our last point, which is number 8, adjournment. If there's no further material to cover, I call the meeting adjourned at 4:01. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Pat, for being here, cheering us on.